Linguistic Insecurity by Chantal Mayer-Crittenden and Danica Cameron. Did you know that many people feel a sense of insecurity when speaking French? Canadian French is different from French spoken in France, in Switzerland, in Belgium, etc. Even within Canada, spoken French varies from one region to another. Ontarians do not speak the same French as Quebecers, as Manitobans, and as Acadians. This sometimes results in Canadians feeling insecure about the way they speak, as well as their accent. But linguistic insecurity isn't just about accents. For many, language standards are at the heart of the problem. There are different values associated with the French language depending on where you live in Canada. In fact, even though many communities share the same language, the linguistic attitudes toward this language vary significantly from one region to another, given the specific social-linguistic context of each community. In other words, the status the language holds within a family and a community. Now, what is linguistic insecurity? Here are a few definitions. Linguistic insecurity is the anxiety or lack of confidence experienced by speakers and writers who believe that their use of language does not conform to the principles and practices of standard French. Linguistic insecurity is a speaker's feeling that the language they use is somehow inferior, ugly, or bad. It is derived from a belief that the language of a socially subordinate group is linguistically deficient. Linguistic insecurity is when speakers consider their speech intolerable towards the norm, what generates anxiety in speaking language or its variety. People tend to compare the French they use to what is called the standard French. Standard French is the language taught in class, the language used by the dominant class, the written language, the language used in communities that use a pure French, the language used by Radio-Canada, for example. The sense of linguistic competence can play a significant role in the feeling of pride or anxiety towards one's language. Here are factors that can lead to linguistic insecurity. Insecurity comes from an action, an intervention, a comment, a menacing context that hurts, intimidates, humiliates, or frustrates someone about their language or the way they use it. Linguistic insecurity is a form of bullying, conscious or not, since it constitutes a judgment not only on the language, but on the culture and identity of the person who speaks French. Linguistic bullying can take place in any setting: the hallway, the classroom, on the playground, on the street, in the mall, and at home. Linguistic bullying can take the form of corrections or revisions. Comments such as, "You have such a nice French," and "You have such a nice accent," can be taken the wrong way based on personal history. Making the distinction between pedagogy and teaching, and correction and judgment allows one to learn French in an inviting and encouraging environment with lots of positive reinforcement. Here are some possible causes of linguistic insecurity: a minority language setting, the degree of exposure to the majority language, youth's negative representations of the French language, linguistic bullying and the presence of the norm, and language and success in school. Here are some consequences of linguistic insecurity: false perceptions of one's speech, self-depreciation of one's linguistic performances, silence. Many people say that their French is not good enough to study or work in French, so they prefer to study or work in English. Linguistic insecurity can even lead to linguistic assimilation, which is shifting to the use of English to the detriment of French. In short, it is when the language of use, which is English, differs from the mother tongue, which is French. Now, let's talk about linguistic security. Language security is a feeling of safety, consciousness of language norm, when a speaker is sure of the legitimacy of speaking, the use of words even if he or she goes beyond the norm. Schools can contribute to language security by raising awareness of the existence of other French accents, By teaching the distinction between accents, standard French, and when to use which language register. For example, at home, with family members, we often use regional French, but during interviews with future employers, we often favor a more formal French. It's important to know when to use these different registers. By promoting French as a socialization language in addition to a working language, by giving students opportunities to discuss and interact with each other in French in a non-judgmental context, a safe space. By giving models of different language registers without judgment, of course. For example, if a child says, "Mon père est allé au magasin avec son truck," the adult can answer by saying, "Ah oui, quelle sorte de camion ton père conduit-il?" Here, the English word truck is borrowed and integrated in the French sentence. This is often seen and accepted in the oral language of certain communities. The adult who speaks French can reiterate what the child has said by using the French word for truck in order to provide a model without it seeming like a correction. Family can also contribute to linguistic security by being, first of all, a positive model who instills linguistic confidence, by encouraging free expression in French without filter and without judgment, by promoting French as a language of socialization, by allowing children to discover and deepen their knowledge of Francophone cultures and their roots, and by providing children with opportunities to hear and express themselves in French. In Francophonie, there is a lot of diversity that can often be heard by accents. Your accent says a lot about your history and where you come from. Everybody has an accent, and all variants of French are good. Be proud of your language.